Good evening. Europe confronts a fear it long believed belonged only to history, the possibility of sending its children into a real war. France's top general has warned that by 2030 Europe must be prepared to defend itself without relying on Americans' shield. Meanwhile, in Washington, a debate intensifies over Venezuela as the U.S. continues to deploy major military assets near Caracas. But experts caution regime change in Latin America has never delivered the stability U.S. presidents hoped for. Two stories, one theme. Power without preparation has always been a dangerous illusion. I'm Mona Moselhi, and this is In Focus. France has spent 80 years without having to consider mass mobilization. Peace was a generation-to-generation expectation. But the war in Ukraine and warnings from NATO commanders are now penetrating France's emotional core. General Fabien Mandon stunned the nation by suggesting that France must be ready to lose our children if war with Russia expands. Even President Macron, once cautious, now proposes a new paid voluntary service, signaling that Europe must prepare to defend itself without guaranteed US intervention. For the French public, this reopens a psychological wound, a shift from wars of choice to a war of necessity. Tonight, Europe confronts a fear it long believed belonged only to history, the possibility of sending its children into a real war. France's top general has warned that by 2030 Europe must be prepared to defend itself without relying on America's shield. Meanwhile, in Washington, a debate intensifies over Venezuela as the US continues to deploy major military assets near Caracas. Now, to start with our first segment and Europe and this big fear, we're joined from London by economist and political analyst Babak Emimian. Mr. Babak, good evening to you and welcome to In Focus. Let me start by asking, has Europe misread the strategic moment by assuming wars stay far away while Russia prepares for direct confrontation?
Thank you for your question. I'd like to start, first of all, the threat from Russia is exaggerated. Russia, with all its might, cannot get to Kiev. So I don't know how they want to get to the rest of Europe. In order for Russia to invade Ukraine, they need at least an army the size of 4 million. For Russia, in order to attack NATO members such as France, they need an army a size of 16 million. It is not there. The maths is not there. But the main issue is Europe is in crisis. It has a low economic growth. It has short-term governments. It has weak leaders. It has an immigration problem. And more importantly, most of Europe is now in control. The governments are left of politics. And people in the left of politics, they have no solution to economic problems. So they always favor wars because wars are a distraction from the domestic problems.
Now, is France psychologically and structurally capable of shifting from symbolic military pageantry to real mobilization readiness?
Well, this comment has not come from a politician, a French politician. It has come from a general, head of the armed forces. And just continue from our previous conversation, this European crisis, the only institution which is still a success in Europe is NATO. So NATO has become Europe's foreign policy, it has become Europe's defense policy, and NATO has become Europe's domestic policy. And NATO leadership is very important. So everybody is scrambling for NATO leadership. The Polish are saying they should be the Europe's NATO leadership because they are next door to Russia and they have a big army. Romanian have the same claim. And now the French, they don't want to fall behind. I think that's why we had this remark from a military guy rather than a politician.
Mm-hmm. But Mr. Babak, where does this fear stem from? I mean, here, do you think that this fear stems from Trump's clear signal that the US may no longer defend Europe automatically? Why is this fear exists in the first place?
Well, thank you for that clever question, because whether you say it's a fear or it's actually a change of direction, because in order for Europe, as you mentioned, to disentangle from dependence on America, for Europe to become independence, they need to spend at least $1 trillion on the military production. Now, $1 trillion is $1,000 billion. And usually when they say $1 trillion, it's a conservative figure. So it is most likely $2 trillion. So in order to invest that in military production, they have to say there is a clear and present danger right now from somebody, this time Russians. So they can reallocate from, for example, healthcare, education, welfare system to military. And that's the issue. So how do you actually re-budget or reallocate in the budget that $1 trillion or $2 trillion?
Eventually, it seems like all this is coming from a threat that Europe feels. So Germany is preparing its youth for possible services. Now, could France soon be forced into conscription despite political outrage? Does the atmosphere prepare nations as administrations want? Do they have the right to feel in threat or threatened?
Fine. And let's just follow your line of argument. Right now, nobody in Europe, including Russia, has the size of the army to be able to invade any country. So no country in Europe has an occupation army. Nobody has it. It's expensive. It takes a lot of manpower. So the manpower is not there. And it's a very difficult job. Even United States, with its all might, could not act as an effective occupation army in Afghanistan or in Iraq. They failed. So that is out. So it all comes down to firepower. Who's got better missiles? Who's got more firepower, better arsenals to hit the other one, to cause damage, but not to invade them? But here, now there is that thinking that we actually do need an occupation army, an army who could go and invade other countries. And that's a big debate. And a lot of people in the military, they love that because now they are losing funding and they are losing their position to scientists who are devising better weapons, and weapons are replacing soldiers. So there is that aspect of it too.
Mm-hmm. Can we speak from the economic point of view? So Financially, can Europe afford both rearmament and domestic stability in a time of inflation and weak growth?
Well, as you put your finger on it, here in the United Kingdom, the Keir Starmer government, the Labour Party government, they are short of 20 to 30 billion pounds, and they've just managed to secure that by that shortfall by raising taxes. But this is very unpopular, so they may not be in power or in position this time or in 2 years' time. So as you said, these governments are weak governments. They have short terms, and they don't think long term. Unfortunately, that has become the nature of liberal democracy after 100 years. So this 100 years experiment has ended up with lots of short-term weak governments. And at the moment, there is no solution. It seems that we are stuck with these short-term weak governments in every country in Europe.
Mm-hmm. If we speak militarily and strategically, if Europe must defend itself by 2030 because it is in an imminent threat, who leads? France, Germany, or an entirely new strategic coalition?
If you ask me, it's Poland right now. Poland has positioned itself as the defender of Europe in much better position than others. Its economy is growing on military production, and it is preparing its army, so it is ahead of time. Romania would like to do the same thing, but I don't think Romania has that influence to become that. So then the three large E's, the United Kingdom, Britain, that is, France or Germany, so they are behind. And I don't know if their population would like them to go that way yet.
So no, let me get it clear here. So you think here that Eastern countries are more prepared militarily than the big economic powers in Europe at this very particular time?
Thank you. Exactly, because America also prefers them as partners than the Britain, French, or Germany, because they become an easier partners for America than either the three large economic powers in Europe would be.
Mm-hmm. So what could be the consequences if Europe hesitates and Ukraine's front line becomes Europe's border?
Well, I don't think we will get to that, because the Russians, if they could have gone further than this, they would have done it by now. They are not. They will advance, but very small by small. And the Russians do not want to escalate the war in Ukraine. First of all, they don't want to escalate it. The other thing, the next stage of escalation would be carpet bombing. And this has been out because Ukraine and Russia were one country for a long time. So you cannot carpet bomb a part of your country, a part of your country that was maybe is now separated, it's a different country. But psychologically, you cannot do that. So this.
But this is what you think, Mr. This is what you think, Mr. Mian. But on the other hand, the leaders of Europe think exactly the opposite. They think that Russia aims for more of Europe.
They say that because they want to sell that scenario in order to reallocate more to military spending. And also to deflect news from the economic crisis that right now we have in Europe generally. You just look at it, the inflation on average is about 3%, but the economic growth is 1%. So every year we are depreciating by 2%. And if you compound that in 5 years, it becomes like 16%. If you compound that over 10 years, it's 20% compounded, it becomes 30%. So economically, Europe will be 30% weaker in 10 years' time. And as we know, economy is everything. Economy is first line of defense. So if you have less money in your pocket, you can spend less money on your military. And that's the reality right now.
Right. Ms. Emimian, Babak Emimian, we thank you so much for joining us. And a continent that thought war was over for good must now learn the costs of defending peace. Next, America faces a choice between ideology and lessons of history. Foreign policy reports growing alarm that President Trump may be preparing for military action in Venezuela as U.S. naval forces mass in the Caribbean, but history's lessons are clear. From Iraq to Libya to Afghanistan, overthrowing a dictator rarely delivers stability. In Venezuela, it risks fueling drug trafficking, mass migration, and alignment with China that exact outcomes. Trump vows to prevent. Analysts warn peace through destabilization has never worked in Latin America. Joining us, political analyst and lawyer, Ms. Ginger Chapman. Ms. Ginger, pleasure having you as always. And let me start by asking, does the return of regime change thinking show the U.S. has not learned the lessons from Iraq, Libya, and Afghanistan? What do you think?
Yes, well, first, thank you for having me today, Ms. Mona, and greetings to your viewers. And yes, Trump's actions in Venezuela are greatly alarming to the majority of the American people because we see this buildup. We now have somewhere between 16,000, 18,000 troops offshore Venezuela, and we are reopening military bases. And this military analysts suggest this is not a wise move on the part of the Trump administration. We do not have a strategy, and the Trump administration is not being honest with the American people. We need transparency. Trump first said this was about narco-terrorism, and using narco-terrorism is a way to get around the military laws that govern the president's actions. If this were a military action, Trump would need the authorization of Congress to do this. So Trump is once again using emergency laws, narco-terrorism to move ahead with military action against Venezuela, but he has no clear objective or strategy. Are we going in for regime change? Are we going in to take over their flagging oil production so that we can put more oil on the global energy market? So, and also, what would Trump's strategy be? There's no way we can enact a regime change merely with airstrikes and bombing campaigns. However, if we need boots on the ground, will 18,000 soldiers be enough? How will we get boots on the ground at a time when countries around Venezuela are willing to send their military men to fight America, to fight the Yankees in Venezuela, and essentially to resist Yankee American imperialism? So Trump does not appear to have a strategy to accomplish his goals, and his goals and objectives are not clear. If this is regime change, it will be extraordinarily messy. The lessons of Vietnam and Iraq loom large over America. So the American voters are looking at Trump. We want transparency. We want to know what his plans are and whether we are even capable of carrying them out.
Indeed. Now, if I may ask you, could military action in Venezuela backfire politically, internally here, what I mean, especially with Trump's base rejecting foreign war adventures?
Yes, this is very risky for Trump, especially right now with his base. Trump campaigned on ending wars. He campaigned on being the peace president. Even as recently as a few weeks ago, he was talking about getting a Nobel Prize for stopping 8 wars. But what we've seen is rather than bringing peace, Trump is being influenced by other forces. For example, our military industrial complex is pushing for greater war involvement in Ukraine. We have war hawks and neocons in the Senate, such as Lindsey Graham, who want to use tariffs and sanctions to escalate hostilities with our trading partners. And indeed, Trump's international and foreign policy appear to have the opposite effect that he promised during his campaign. Instead of bringing peace abroad and prosperity and low energy prices at home, Trump's actions are driving up global energy prices. Our sanctions on Russia and Iran are driving up world energy prices. And also, our tariffs are driving up costs for American consumers at home. We still have persistent inflation. And most importantly, America is overextended. America has over 700 military bases around the world that we know of. This does not include the dark, secret bases that we know are operating around the world. America looks at the crime problems at home. We look at the civil unrest that we see in the streets. We look at the polarization amongst the American people and the political parties. And we want Trump to bring our men home and have them become productive parts of American society, whether this would be guarding our border or starting businesses and taking part in American life. America's military is overextended, and this is weakening us abroad. It is confusing our allies and our adversaries alike. And this venture into Venezuela this could be a very bad move. We see that the resistance in Venezuela, this Maria Camacho, who won the Nobel Peace Prize, and then immediately started urging America to move in and engage in regime change, military activity. This speaks of a larger geopolitical agenda, which America does not want to be drawn into. We are overextended. We are broke. Even if we are able to gain access to Maduro's gold, oil, lithium, his natural resources, that still would not help our economic situation because we would still have to extract them and create manufacturing industries, which will take years. So we would wind up overextending ourselves, getting ourselves into a military and economic quagmire with no economic gains in the near future. This is viewed as a bad move by Trump's supporters, and it is causing his most diehard supporters to question his America First campaign promises.
Right. Let me discuss it here from another point, from another area. And military interventions. Do you think military interventions would push migration towards the U.S. borders rather than reduce it?
That is another big danger that many analysts are warning about. Even previously in Trump's first term, he explored the possibility of regime change against Maduro. That was unsuccessful, but it did result in a wave of Venezuelan refugees coming into America. If we have regime change now, this will spark another wave of Venezuelan refugees, and it will also spark a wave of associated refugees from South America into America at a time where we are already planning to build military bases in Gaza, military bases in Syria. One thing we do know, whenever the United States engages in military action overseas, we wind up with refugees from those countries. We have large populations of refugees from Somalia, Afghanistan, Iraq. Every place that America has bombed, we wind up with waves of refugees. So this is another aspect that is alarming to the American people.
Well, if we speak about the rivalry actions, and how would rival states do about that? Now, from your point of view, for an instant, how would China exploit a US-triggered crisis economically or militarily on America's doorstep?
Yes, well, one thing we have seen evidence for this is in the United Nations Security Council meeting voting on Resolution 2803 for Gaza. We saw China and Russia abstain for different reasons. However, basically, what China and Russia see America doing is getting ourselves dug deeper into military and economic holes. China can sit back and see America overextend ourselves in the Middle East, in South America. And what this does is it draws America's time, money, attention, and military power away from the conditions and the countries we say are important, such as the ongoing low-grade warfare with Iran, the conflict in Syria, in Lebanon, in Ukraine. America is trying to be honest brokers in those conflicts. We are failing because we are not honest brokers. We are actually part of the war process. We are taking sides. We are shipping weapons, soldiers, military support. So America cannot play the role of honest broker to mediate conflicts. At the same time, we are actively fighting in and supporting these conflicts. And to answer your question, America is overextended, and China looks at the role of the United States as digging ourselves in deeper. And of course, China must be happy because the more money, time, attention that we spend in Venezuela, in Gaza, Syria, Lebanon, the less attention we can pay to China, the South China Sea, the Indo-Pacific, and China can move ahead with their reunifications with plans with Taiwan. And essentially the great powers, Russia, China, they can sit back and watch the United States overextend ourselves, and they can see the United States defeat ourselves without them having to put as much effort into defeating us.
If I may ask you here, do you think hawks inside Trump's administration are pushing him towards a conflict that contradicts with his America First promises, or who exactly is pushing him?
This is what is prompting an internal civil war within the Republican Party. Trump's supporters, his voters, we relied on his promises to bring peace, but we were alarmed when we saw, as soon as he got into office, international forces such as AIPAC, big money donors, pushed Trump into greater military involvement in the Middle East. We see the EU and NATO push Trump into greater involvement in Ukraine. Trump appears impotent and incapable of withdrawing American interests the way he promised to during his campaign. It appears that Trump is, first, he is afraid of failure in Ukraine. He is afraid that when Ukraine finally fails in our proxy war against Russia, America and Europe wanted to use Ukraine as a battering ram against Russia. We see now that Russia is more economically resilient and militarily stronger than we thought. So America is overextended in Russia. And excuse me, I did forget the first part of your question, but Trump is trying to serve many masters. He's trying to serve the EU, NATO, Israeli big money donors, and he's dragging America deeper into wars, and his base is becoming increasingly angry over this, and this is jeopardizing his future prospects.
So, Ms. Chapman, briefly, because I'm running out of time, what do you think? What do you think the path would be towards protecting the interests of the United States?
American voters, Trump supporters, are pushing Trump to extricate, to withdraw, to pull back our military. However, it seems like at this time, the international pressures, even Trump's personnel, his cabinet members, Secretary of State Rubio, wants these wars to continue. So Trump has an uphill battle. The international forces in favor of war appear to be overriding Trump's domestic base that wants him to make good on his promises of peace. So unfortunately, we may see Trump being dragged deeper into war, dragging the American population with him against our will.
But then here we're speaking about a choice of war, not a choice of peace, and that would put the United States, according to what you're saying, into true crisis, right?
Correct. And even Marjorie Taylor Greene, she did point out that Trump is at his most powerful right now. The first year of his presidency, before he becomes a lame duck, he can put his foot down. He can withdraw. He can say, this is not my war. These are not my wars. This is what the American people want him to do. This is what he campaigned on.
Yes.
But he appears
Very
powerless to do this.
Very clear, Miss Ginger. We thank you so much for your very valuable insights as usual. And tonight we've seen two parallel realities: Europe waking up to the cost of the war, and America flirting with a cost it cannot afford. This has been In Focus. Many thanks for watching. Good night.